Hi, this is John Rowell for the Rowell Report. Today is Monday, November 24th, 2025, and today is the day in which President Maduro and his government have been designated basically terrorists by the United States as a terrorist organization and the so-called Cartel de los Soles. So, anyway, the threats that the Trump administration was wielding earlier have been made effective, and so this will give, within the U.S. government, this will give the government of President Trump more leverage to carry out a more widespread action in Venezuela. So anyway, I want to look into this whole situation and see if I can figure things out a little bit as we go through the different sources of information, and then I will discuss the consequences for the U.S. if they are successful, and the consequences to the U.S. if they are not successful. So anyway, let's get right into it. And before I start, if you could hit the like button, subscribe, and share, I'd appreciate it to help this channel grow. Anyway, we have this article here from the Trump administration. Venezuela accuses U.S. of using narco-terrorism allegations to justify regime change. So we have here the second paragraph. On Monday, the Trump administration officially designated a Venezuela group known as the Cartel de los Soles a terrorist organization despite widespread doubts over its actual existence. So of course it doesn't exist. It's just a creation of convenience so that President Trump and his administration can continue on their efforts for regime change in Venezuela. But let's take a little bit a deeper look at that. And here we have the Miami Herald, which is certainly very much a source of anti-Maduro news articles. Here we have this article: Venezuelans see Maduro weakening, pin hopes on U.S. and Machado, poll finds. So, supposedly a London-based research firm, Pantera, had surveyed 1,200 residents in Venezuela and found that 70% of Venezuelans no longer identify with the political movement founded by Hugo Chavez. And not only that, nearly 2/3 of respondents, 63%, said Maduro is not legitimate. And they're repeating here the claim that the July 2024 election was illegitimate. It was fraught with election fraud. And so the real winner of that is Edmundo Gonzalez Urrutia, although no information is presented that actually sustains that argument. And so here's a little bit more from that. From that supposed poll, more than half of them expected Maduro to be ousted within the next 6 months, with 36 predicting his fall within 3 months. A 61% majority said Maduro's regime is weaker than it was a year ago, while 28% said it is about the same, and only 11% said it is stronger. So if you're in a country and you don't like the government, but a country which has been, which you've had economic war with for the past, 20 some years, is going to try to do a regime change and to bring chaos and upheaval to your country, do you think you would support chaos and upheaval, or would you support the individual in power because that person is fighting against those foreign governments which are trying to make changes in your country? So anyway, I think these poll numbers are completely pulled out of a hat. And of course they would be in the Miami Herald, which is certainly very anti-Maduro. So anyway, now we go into the discussion of the narco-terrorists. And so just briefly, a narco and a terrorist are basically on opposite ends of the spectrum. A narco is a businessman who has a product to sell, and so they use logistics to move that product from point A to point B, and try to involve the least amount of investment, of money and time. And what they want is to get back huge amounts of money so that they can get rich. And not only that, they need to pay off judges, lawyers, police, military, politicians, etc. So anyway, the narco business is all about fast turnover from product to money, and to keep this whole business going. And the terrorists, they're all, the narco is all about being invisible and keeping things out of sight, and moving things very quickly. The terrorists is about carrying out limited actions. They don't really matter the expense, but what is important is the political message they want to send. So they want change, and they use terrorism to create that change. So, you can't put narco and terrorist together because they just don't fit. But if you were to take two magnets, both positive end, and try to put them together, you could hold them together by force for a time, but once you let go of either of them, they would separate off. And so, what keeps this whole the glue that keeps narco and terrorist in a juxtaposition in the media is the media itself, which is pushing these narratives. So, and then people catch on and think, oh, narco terrorist is a thing. So we're gonna, we believe it because the news media says it, because Trump administration says it. But anyway, they want us to believe that these narco terrorists are gonna put a couple of little bags of illegal drugs into a boat, and then they're going to move that boat, up, over 1,000 miles from Caracas to Miami. And they want us to believe that that they are the main importers of illegal drugs into the United States, using maritime shipping. And so let's just see if we can take a quick look at that to see if it makes any sense, and we'll move on to the next source. But anyway, you can see from Caracas, Venezuela to the most southern tip of Dominican Republic is well under 400 miles. In fact, if they left from Aruba, if they left Caracas and then refueled in Aruba, they would come up far short of the Dominican Republic. And that is if it was a calm day and they could go in a straight line without having to go this way and that way and veer off and away from patrol boats. So anyway, so this scenario doesn't make any sense. It doesn't work. So then the other scenario is that they're gonna take from Venezuela. They're gonna go up these series of islands in the Caribbean and eventually get to the United States, which is over here. So this also makes very little sense, because, like I said, with the narcos, they're all about logistics, about moving the product as quickly and as efficiently as possible with the least amount of cost. And if you've ever had a boat and a big outboard motor, you know that these boats don't get very good fuel consumption, these motors, and so you need a lot of gasoline to go a short amount of distance, relatively speaking, to other forms of transportation. So not only are the boats slow, but they're also expensive to move. And then you don't really have a a a good logistical route to move from Venezuela up to Florida. You got to go around all these islands, which takes time, money, and could be intercepted at any point by any one of these um, island governments. So, um, you know, the idea that somehow most of the drugs are flowing into the United States through boats that are coming from Venezuela makes absolutely no sense. Um, the clearest path up and the most logical, as far as logistics goes, is the traditional route, which comes from Colombia, goes into Panama, and then up eventually into Mexico, and then to the United States. And so President Trump seems to back up this claim that it's the water route that's being used because he has secured the border. He assured us he secured the border, but if these drugs are not coming to us from the water and are coming us from land, then he has not secured the border. Okay? So no matter what President Trump says, he has not secured the border. Because if the drugs continue to flow into the United States and they're not using sea, then they're using land. And, this is the land routes that they have to bring it into the United States. So, anyway, the idea of narco terrorists doesn't work. And then the fact that they call this so-called group Cartel de los Soles, and most people doubt that that even exists. It's just a made-up concept. And then finally, President, or third point is President Trump says the border's secure, so it must be the water. But if it's not coming from the water, then the logical conclusion that the border is not secure. So, lastly, this whole idea of a narco-terrorist with boats moving small quantities of these illegal drugs, up through the Caribbean into the U.S. does not make any sense at all. So, anyway, if we take a look at Colombia, it's much more logical that the drugs are coming from Colombia, and most people who you would hear from, some people who have collaborated in the DEA and other governmental organizations to try to slow the flow of illegal drugs in the United States, say that it's coming from Colombia and then coming into Panama and then up through Mexico into the U.S. So, but you say, well, isn't Venezuela also moving drugs? Anyway, here on this map, you can see the different points where the coca leaf, I guess that they use to make the cocaine, where it's being cultivated and grown, and then from there it's going to be shipped. So you can see if most of what they have is closer to Panama than the coast of Venezuela, just as a pure logistics, you would want to move it through Panama. So again, that doesn't make much sense. Now, what is going on in Venezuela? What's going on is that the Colombian narcos, we have the FARC and the ELN, are using remote areas in Venezuela to grow their product and then move it. They're obviously going to move it into Colombia and then up through Panama. So, again, we don't see any reference here to the Cartel de los Soles. Nobody's heard it before. It doesn't exist. It's just a creation of a of the political situation or political attitude that the Trump administration has towards Venezuela and the President Maduro administration. And here we have this article from justsecurity.org, and it asks the question, if the Trump administration was successful to change the government, who would lead Venezuela? And so we have the past examples of the U.S. not doing a very good job of installing a government after a regime change. We have Afghanistan, we have Iraq, um, and then they mention about Machado. She would be a popular individual, but she may not. She may be seen as a traitor, and may not have the qualities to run the country. And then let's see now. There was another point this article made. I think that was important. Um, but what would be the strategy of the Trump administration to maintain order and the rule of law? And in case the country falls apart, you would have a refugee crisis going on, and the U.S. may see again thousands of Venezuelans coming towards the U.S. border. So the U.S. May win in the short term, but in the long term, it could be disastrous. So this article is, I guess, supportive of Machado, but does not, but asks many questions about how the Trump administration would actually secure the country, bring it to rule of law, or have good leadership, when in the past the U.S. really has not shown any ability to do that. So that's just security.org. And then here we are in commondreams.org, which talks about the regime change efforts of the Trump administration. So what is the truth about all of this? The truth is that the U.S. war on Venezuela has nothing to do with drugs and everything to do with control. For years, Venezuela has faced relentless pressure, economic warfare, sanctions, and constant threats designed to undermine its sovereignty and keep it under the boot of U.S. empire. As with most nations, U.S. interest in Venezuela is about strategic resources and power. First, Venezuela sits atop the largest proven oil reserves in the world, along with significant deposits of gold, coltan, and other minerals critical to technology and energy production. So this is not only about oil, but also about rare earths. And also Venezuela's geographical location within Latin America makes it a pivotal point of leverage within the region. And then continues here the article about the defiance of Venezuela, and that this is a this is very bothersome to the United States. Says, yet Venezuela's defiance did not emerge in a vacuum. It followed more than a century of U.S. domination across the hemisphere, from the invasion of Haiti, the occupation of Nicaragua, to the coups in Guatemala, Chile, Honduras. What unites these histories is a single message from Washington: no Latin American nation has the right to chart an independent course. So that is the argument from the Common Dreams. So that seems to be more about what is going on here, what's at play. And we also have Venezuela and Russia signing a 10-year strategic partnership treaty. Venezuela had the possibility of joining BRICS in 2024, but apparently Brazil opposed its entrance. So supposedly because of doubts over the election that took place. But anyway, Venezuela is moving its way towards being a candidate nation for BRICS. And also China has an interest in Venezuela because of the infrastructure projects, and it can become involved in the country's economy through providing infrastructure projects. So we have Venezuela, who is opposing the U.S. hegemony in South America, the Monroe Doctrine, where the U.S. has to control everything that goes on in North, Central, and South America. And so finally we have this information about the war whether the U.S. would be successful with an invasion or not. And we have this article from Intelligence Online. Moscow sends drone experts from the Rubicon Special Unit to Caracas. The Rubicon Special Unit are the Russian soldiers who have shown great um, uh, capability with using drones in warfare. So there was a plane that was flown to Venezuela, which had previously belonged to the Wagner Group. It was a Il-76 aircraft, one of those cargo planes. So anyway, it's hard to say exactly what was in that plane. But if they sent the Rubicon Special Unit, then probably it was drones that could be used, and they could stop any tank, armored car, jeep, U.S. personnel. It could take out howitzers. It could take out any planes that landed in Venezuela. Um, so anyway, the whole drone warfare and the experience, according to this article, is going to be transmitted to Venezuela so that they can also use drones to fight against the U.S. troops and slow them down, destroy their military equipment. So anyway, if Venezuela is um, is going to be a future partner with Russia and China, then there's probably going to be not only these drone units, but also uh, um, the aerial defense. So anyway, all this time where Trump is deciding what to do or what not to do, Venezuela is getting up to speed on certain military equipment. So the situation, if the Trump administration would have just decided to invade instead of this big buildup, he may have had better possibilities of having success. But now that he's waited, the Venezuelans are now getting ready, and they could certainly slow the U.S. down. Now, if the CIA is in Venezuela, are they going to be able to get to where they need to go? Because Venezuela is a big country, it has lots of jungles, and can take a very long period of time to move from point A to point B. So, anyway, I don't know what the Trump administration is going to do, but if they don't act, then this will look like a big loss for the Trump administration. If they are to backpedal, they have the aircraft carrier unit, or the that group. They have all these other ships. They have enough soldiers assembled to create an invasion force. Now, would they be able to go from invasion to regime change? Would they be stopped by the Venezuelans at the coast? That is a really hard question to answer, but I think that the Venezuelans are unifying more behind Maduro, and if they were to hold off an invasion from the United States, then this would be, like I say, a big L for President Trump, and would show that the U.S. is now in military decline. So now Trump is between a rock and a hard place. If he doesn't act, if he backpedals, he will look weak. If he attempts to invade and that fails, he will look even weaker. And even if he was able to take out some of the Maduro administration, would they just be replaced like by like? And maybe someone in the Maduro government would be interested in more radical action to stop the U.S. than Maduro. Maduro seems to be more of a politician, interested in talking and working things out. Somebody who would replace him may be much more much less interested in talking and much more interested in fighting. So um, the U.S. is in a very difficult, precarious situation. And finally, want to get to this point. If the U.S. was really interested in stopping the drugs into the United States, you have something, I don't know if you've heard of it, but the Panama Canal, and it's a natural barrier, and you could set up a security line on the other side of the Panama Canal, and you could probably stop 80% of what's flowing up the coast. Um, you only have really two bridges. You only have two bridges that pass the Panama Canal. Um, you have these two, and then you have a very small road up here. Let's see if we can get. Is this even a road? So here's the street. So I mean, this is also a road that people could take to go, um, to move drugs. But I mean, there's three choke points for the moving the product through. Um, so they could stop most of that there in Panama, and so make a long story short, if there's no drugs coming on the sea and it's mostly coming on land, they've basically known for over 50 years how to stop the movement up to the United States. Why haven't they stopped it? Why do they keep talking about other things? Why do they keep talking about Mexico? Of course, there's a lot coming from Mexico too. But if you're talking about cocaine and others that come from South America, this is one of the roads that they would be using. So anyway, it seems quite. It seems that there should be a much easier way to slow down the movement of drugs into the United States. Now, if we're talking about fentanyl and all of these drugs that are created in a laboratory, of course, you could set up a laboratory, in a garage or anywhere really, in a rented building. So they're probably doing most of that inside the United States to just avoid this whole problem of moving it from Colombia all the way on the coastal roads until you get to the United States. So anyway, kind of a long report, but anyway, I think this whole matter regarding Maduro is now Trump has painted himself into a corner, and he's designated Maduro as a terrorist, something which he has really no proof to back that up. And so this could be certainly a big L for President Trump. And if he tries to invade Venezuela, they may find that it's tough going in the jungle, and certainly once they get past the beach, they may meet up with a lot of resistance. They may meet up with drones. They may meet up with a lot of things. So anyway, I think this is a really bad situation that President Trump put himself into. He wanted to install Machado as the leader and then take the natural resources from Venezuela as they had done in the past. But it looks the longer he waits, the harder it's going to be for President Trump to get public backing. I think public backing has already changed for President Trump, so I don't think he will get any public backing, and none of this seems to make any sense. So this could be a big L for President Trump. What do you think? Please leave your comments below, and thank you for joining me. I hope you have a wonderful day. Have a good and take care. Bye bye.